This is a paid program. Advice and opinions expressed during the program are solely that of Melick Law, not WBEV or Good Karma Brands. And welcome to a Melick Monday with Rob Melick of Melick Law. We are live from the Slumberland Furniture Studios this morning, and we are also live from the Daily Dodge TV studios. So check out the live stream at dailydodge.com. Rob Melick of Melick Law is your hometown lawyer. He joins us the third Monday of every month at 11:10 to help you understand things that most likely are quite intimidating. You always make the point, Rob, that people, kind of ignore estate planning because no one wants to think about, death and dying and all the responsibilities that come with it, and, why an estate plan is important and how they can avoid probate, all of those big things. Hello, happy Monday.
Same to you, Amy.
So the song that we bumped into your show with, I think has significant meaning. Do you know why it has significant meaning?
I know exactly why it has significant meaning, and I'm impressed that you were able to remember that. We sponsored a brewer trip about a month ago, and one of the topics of discussion was what would our walk-up music be if we were Major League Baseball players, and I chose Phil Collins' In the Air Tonight. So just a great song. So it's something that, again, I don't know about a noon game if that's the appropriate song, but most, I'd say about 2/3 of baseball games are in the evening, so it'll play for at least 2/3 of the time. So that would be my walk-up music of choice. Even though I'm a country fan, there's any number of country music songs I could have chosen there, but just the drum beat, the sound, it's just a great song for
cool.
walk-up music for sure.
It's a solid choice, Rob Melick.
Well, I appreciate that, Amy.
Well, we appreciate you sponsoring the Milwaukee baseball bus trip. It was such a fun day with our fans.
It was.
And it was really cool, too, that you had called the office. You called the Melick Law office and told everybody that was there, the three teammates that were on staff, nope, taking you to the ballpark for the day.
Yeah, we had a couple extra tickets, so I called the paralegals, and I said if all the work is done, which they're always on top of stuff, I said close the office, come down to the game, and we had a great time. It worked out really well. Brewers got a win, most importantly. So
yeah, we had to wait kind of a long time for any action to happen in the game.
0-0 game for the longest time, but they pulled it out, and a win's a win, so it's good to see it. I've been to 5 games this year, and they're 4-1, so I really can't complain about that. So
no, not at all.
Yeah.
And they're in Miami tonight. And
they are in Miami, correct.
Yeah, the pregame show will hit the air here on 95.3 at 5:05.
Okay.
So,
yeah, East Coast games, so they tend to start a little earlier down there.
Yeah. I want to make sure folks know how they can call into the show today, because a big part of what you do is helping people with those questions that they're going to phone in and they're going to text with. Our studio line is open for your questions for Rob at 885-4446, 885-4446. And you can also text at 887-9595, 887-9595. And, when you talk about estate planning being a topic that most people just choose to ignore, why is that, Rob?
Well, I think it's because it necessarily involves thinking about your own mortality. And I think that's, as human beings, that's something we don't always want to think about. It's funny, I read something somewhere, and again, I don't know the science behind this, but I've heard that that human beings are the only species that are aware of their own mortality.
Really?
That other animals can see death, right? I mean, if there's a set of deer and one gets hit by a car, they can see that they got hit, but they don't know that eventual fate, mortality, is going to happen to them as well. So I think that has something to do with it, that we as humans, because of the intelligence we have compared to other animals, are aware of that. Any sane, rational human being is aware that they're going to pass away at some point in time. And that's a hard reality. It's one of those things where if you really step back and think about it, it really should take you aback that you're not guaranteed tomorrow. That's the other thing too. We don't know when it's going to happen. It's not like we're all given X amount of years and we live all the way up to when we can and we know we're going to pass away. We just don't know when it's going to occur. We can tell with 100% certainty that it's going to occur. Mm-hmm. We just have no idea when it's going to occur. And I think what that does, and this is one of those, they don't teach you this in law school type things, because I can tell you this, first generation lawyer, when I went to law school, I had no idea what kind of lawyer I was going to be. I'd love to say that when I first had my first day of law school, I knew I wanted to be an estate planning attorney, but that would be a lie. I had no idea. I wanted to get through law school. I wanted to become a lawyer, and just whatever field happened. But when you think about estate planning, that's really what it is. And people come in, oftentimes they're very nervous. I have some clients who, embrace the inevitable, and that's kind of the position I'm in. Yeah, it's one of those things where I know we've talked about this on air before, Amy, but I'm 42 years old. I've already written my own obituary because I know the end is coming. I know it's going to occur at some point in time, probably because of what I do for a living. Admittedly, sure. I'm a little biased in that regard, I suppose. But, I have some clients who embrace it, and I have other clients who are terrified of it, and kind of everywhere in between. And I think those clients who are terrified of it, I think it takes a lot of courage for them to come forward and set up a meeting with me because, again, they just don't want to think about it. The image I constantly see is the ostrich with its head buried in the sand. And that's how a lot of people think about estate planning. Oh, I'll get to it later. Yeah, I know it's important, but I have plenty of time. I'm still young. And my simple response is this. The earlier you get it done, the longer you get to enjoy the peace of mind of knowing it's done correctly, and you have the ability to make revisions as life events occur. Oftentimes those life events, I boil down to the simple phrase of 3 Ds and a B: death, divorce, disability, and birth. Those are 4 common life events that will frequently cause people to want to update their estate planning documents. And again, we have the ability to adjust those documents accordingly based upon the occurrence of those life events. So again, and oftentimes that's what gets people to come to see me. Someone in their family dies prematurely. They have a neighbor who they now see going through probate, and they say, gee, I want to do whatever I can to avoid this. So sometimes those life events are the actual motivations for getting people to pull their head out of the sand so that they do create their own estate plan.
So very important to pull the head out of the sand because it can really make things complicated for a family that is left behind.
Absolutely.
If someone has not planned properly.
You bet. And that's what I always tell my clients too, Amy. You're not necessarily doing estate planning for yourselves. You're doing it for your loved ones because people grieve differently. People mourn differently. But I can tell you unequivocally, I've never once had a client in my practice say, gee, I really wish my parents hadn't done this estate planning. It's always just the opposite. It's, this moment of grief, this time of grief in our life, at least this is one thing we didn't have to worry about. We didn't have to worry about the legal or the financial aspects of it because our parents gave us the gift of making sure that we didn't have to deal with it. And if they do it in a way to avoid probate, they avoid having to go to court also. So that's something I focus on in my practice too, not only creating the estate plan, but making it as quick, as easy, and as inexpensive and with minimal governmental interference as possible to make sure that the estate goes to where you want it to go. People work hard for their money. And they have the ability and they have the right to make sure that it gets to the people and the causes they want it to go to with as minimal red tape as possible. And that's what an estate plan can do for you.
What can folks expect when they make that first appointment with you, Rob, at Melick Law? Because if it's a big step, they're stepping out of their comfort zone. They're going to put themselves out there. And is it really just getting together for a conversation?
Absolutely. The first thing I would say is that it's wherever you feel comfortable having that meeting. Yes, I do have the office in Beaver Dam. Sandy and Matt let me use their office in Beaver Dam to meet with clients. But I do also have offices in Richfield, West Bend, and Port Washington. So location, I'm pretty available with that. I have some people say, I've heard Port Washington's a beautiful city. I'm happy to take an hour-long ride to get there just to see a nice city and have a nice lunch on the lake, especially as the weather's getting better. So that happens too. But I also do house calls. I have a lot of clients who may have mobility issues. They'd rather stay in their home. I have clients who might have young children. They don't want to have to get a babysitter. So I'm happy to meet at your home. Also virtually. I have some telephone initial meetings, Zoom, things like that. So again, as you correctly pointed out, Amy, it's a big step for people to make that first call to set up an estate planning meeting with me. And so I don't want there to be any hurdles or any impediments as to why you would want to do that. So in addition to offering those services, offering those locations, I do always offer a free initial consultation. So you're never going to have to worry about cost with the first meeting. Again, my goal is to provide information. That's what I'm doing with this radio show. I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm just trying to give you information because I don't care what venue you're talking about, whether it's buying a car or anything else. You can't make a fully informed decision without getting full information first. So whether it's through this show, through a free initial consultation, that's what I try to provide to prospective clients and then let them make a decision as to how and whether they want to proceed.
Your hometown lawyer, Rob Melick of Melick Law, is with us here this morning on Taking Care of Business. And of course, the studio line is open for your calls. So if you have a question for Rob, you need some advice, certainly ring us up at 885-4446, 885-4446. And you can also text. Our text line is 887-9595, 887-9595. Before we started hosting the show together, Rob, I always had the mindset that, well, estate planning is for older people, and I'm not that old yet. I don't need to do that. But I am a mom with one daughter, our oldest, who will soon be 18. And my husband and I need to get our ducks in a row because that's a big deal. I've learned an awful lot on your show, but let's let folks know why that is important.
Yeah, so when it comes to minor children, that's really the key thing. And I'd argue perhaps, and I'm speaking more as Rob the father as opposed to Rob the lawyer here.
Yeah, because you have two sons.
I do. I have two boys who are 14 and 11. So speaking as a father, I can tell you that the most important aspect of estate planning has to do with those children or those parents who have children who are under the age of 18. Why? Because an estate plan is the only way that you can legally determine guardianship of minor children. So think of it this way, like you mentioned, you're younger individual, have minor children. What do I need an estate plan for? Well, if you don't have an estate plan and something happens to you and your spouse, courts are going to determine guardianship of your minor children. And I don't care what other document you have in place. I hear this all the time. Well, we got a notarized document that says my sister is going to be the guardian, or, we have an understanding with my parents that they're going to serve as guardians. What I have to say bluntly is that's great. It's not worth the paper it's written on. The only way to legally determine guardianship of minor children is to have an estate plan in place. And again, when it comes to how that's set up and what people need to do with it, it's not that difficult. It's not that complicated, but you still have that misconception. People still, and Hollywood doesn't help either. You have TV shows where they talk about this, and my favorite one that's not exactly on point is the reading of a will. I've been practicing law 17 years. I've never gathered everyone around the room to read a will.
I've never experienced that either.
Well, that's because it doesn't exist. It's good television, sure.
Real life isn't that dramatic,
No,
Rob.
it's not. Well, and that's the thing. It gets good ratings. I always joke that if they did a television show about what I do for a living, it'd go off the air in 2 episodes because everyone would be bored to death. I mean, I sit around, I talk to people, I have conversations. I mean, they're important conversations,
Sure.
but it's not exactly dramatic. It's not exactly Hollywood worthy. Do have some good stories from it, but again, not exactly the day-to-day stuff that gets people going, but these are important discussions to have. But again, having those guardianships in place are very important because, again, money's money, right? You want to preserve as much of it as you can, but I'd argue to any parent, what's more important than being able to determine guardianship of your minor children? And what I've learned is it's not necessarily who's going to be the guardian, but who's not going to be the guardian. In other words, in most families, there is a person or a set of people that the parents affirmatively do not want to be guardians. And that group or those people have the exact same chance of going into court, filing a petition, and having the court determine that, yes, they in fact are the best choices. The statement is simple. Who better than the parents to make that determination? But the only way that determination can be legally enforceable is if it is in a written estate plan. Because in the absence of that, again, anybody can petition the court and make an argument as to why they think that they would do the best job. And the judge is going to do the best job he or she can, but all they're presented with is the arguments of a couple attorneys who are trying to get their client the guardianship of the minor children that these people, of course, are seeking. And what I would also say is this, is that in my experience, a little under half of my clients will pick a non-family member to serve as guardian, maybe a close family friend, whatever the case is. And that person, not being a family relative, has very little chance of going into court and saying, you know what, court, I know that this child or these children have all these relatives, but they really wanted me. The first question is, beware the proof. Mm-hmm. We need to have it written in an estate planning document in order for it to be enforceable.
I can't think of anything that would be more important than covering off on that.
Right. And that's an aspect people simply don't know about. There's a lot of things. Well, you need to have a will. Okay, most people think about that. They understand, getting assets to where you need them to go, who's going to be in charge, things like that. But as you correctly point out, most people don't think about it from a guardianship standpoint. It just avoids people's memory. They just assume, well, yeah, I mean, we have an agreement, we have it written down, not worth it. It's completely unenforceable. And then you also mentioned your daughter who's about to turn 18. That's yet another subgroup of people who need to have an estate plan, because the moment your child, or any child for that matter, turns 18,
it's a magical age.
It is a magical age. We need to have very basic estate planning documents there. Now, that draws some shocks from people. Why on earth does an 18-year-old need an estate plan? Like you said, you come from that preconception that it's only for old people. 18 is about as young, it is as young of an adult as you can get. Why does that 18-year-old need an estate plan? Well, like any good lawyer, I'll defend the statements that I make, because the moment a child turns 18, they are now subject to what is called HIPAA. I'm sure most people in the listening audience have heard of HIPAA. HIPAA is an acronym that stands for the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. In English, it determines when and under what circumstances medical providers can share your medical information with other people. Now, for the most part, we don't want our medical providers sharing our medical information with people. That's very private. We want to make sure we maintain the integrity of that relationship. But at the same time, there are certain people we want that information shared with. But the problem is that if you take an average 18-year-old, what I would say is this: the average 18-year-old is a senior in high school. Sometimes people have a later birthday. Like I said, I happen to have a summer birthday. I graduated high school at 17, but turned 18 the July right after high school graduation, right? But if you look at most 18-year-olds in Wisconsin, the day they turn 18, they are still in high school. Mm-hmm. Most people who are still in high school are still living with their parents. I think most people just assume, well, if you're living with the parents, you're a senior in high school, of course parents can make medical or financial decisions if that 18-year-old becomes incapacitated. That simply isn't the case. Unless we have a healthcare power of attorney in place, the parents are powerless not only to make medical decisions for an 18-year-old who is incapacitated, they can't even receive information regarding that person's care, because sharing that information without that consent violates that person's HIPAA rights. Now, just to be clear, what is the most common example of this? Think of a car accident. Mm-hmm. Think of an 18-year-old driving to school without a care in the world. Not the greatest of drivers. Most 18-year-olds aren't, right? They get in a car accident. They're taken to the hospital. They're in a coma. They don't have the ability to say or to communicate, hey, call my parents because I'm in the hospital. So hospitals can't assume that that's their intent. They need to have it written down through what's called a healthcare power of attorney. So that's why I take the position that every single person over the age of 18 needs to have an estate plan, because we don't know who it's going to occur to. A common thing I like to say is this: in addition to being a lawyer, I love statistics. I am a numbers geek. I'll fully cop to that. I love that's one of the reasons I love baseball. It's about as statistically driven of a sport as there is, right? But the logic is this: fortunately, the overwhelming majority of 18-year-olds will not be in that situation. The vast majority of 18-year-olds will never lose capacity for a period of time. But you know what? The percentage isn't zero either. It's somewhere north of zero. It's not high, which is a good thing, but it's not zero either. And the problem is, for any given 18-year-old, we don't know which group we're going to fall into. Yeah. So having those powers of attorney in place the moment a child turns 18, in my opinion, is the best form of insurance you can possibly get, because it guarantees you that no matter whether you have that very likely event where you never need it, or the very unlikely event that you really need it and you wish you had it, you're protected either way.
When you were talking about being a dad of two, I popped into my head something you had shared before we hit the air together. You've got a big celebration coming up for one of your kiddos, 8th grade graduation.
Yeah, 8th grade graduation. So that'll be fun. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, no, he in the school he goes to is a K-12 school, so they're still going to stay at the same school.
Nice.
But it's always a big deal. And my wife's parents are flying in. My sister-in-law's flying in. So it'll be exciting. So he's all excited. He picked out a white shirt with a pink tie to wear. So
very nice.
More power to him. So
2024, the color of the year is pink.
Absolutely. So he'll be doing that. My wife Erica took him clothes shopping while I took the other one out for lunch. So
you got the better end of that.
I did.
Deal, Mr. Melick.
I took my younger son Hudson to lunch, and she picked out that she's better at that than I am. So she picked out the clothes for him. If it was up to me, it'd probably be in t-shirt and jeans, but who knows? Not exactly the most formal of things, but yeah, no, we're looking forward to that. It'll be a good celebration for him, and he works hard in school, works hard in sports, so it'll be a nice celebration of what he's accomplished over the past couple of years here, and get him ready for high school next year. So.
Oh my goodness!
That's intimidating.
It goes by so fast.
Well,
it does.
And it's funny because we were talking about getting a car, driver's license, and everything, and he's very excited about that. It's funny. I can remember when I was 13, 14, all I wanted to do was drive. I couldn't wait to get
Same.
my driver's license. And, for a while when he was, 10, 11, 12, he was more skittish about it. But now he's like, yeah, I really want to do it. I really want to get my driver's license. The problem is he's got a February birthday. So he's going to learn to drive in the winter, which is not great.
No, but, extra skills.
Absolutely. But
good.
that's the hard line. My wife and I will talk about that more. I mean, like I said, I had a July birthday, so
No
I
worries.
didn't have to worry about that. And then my other son's got a September birthday, so when he turns 16, that's going to be pretty good too. But with a birthday in early February, that's a little dicey. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there, I suppose.
Yeah,
But,
that's all you can do.
I'm not too worried about it. But he's excited to drive, and it may be one time where the video games could come in handy. I hate video games, absolutely hate.
But that quick reaction.
Well, and just he plays Mario Kart. Like Mario Kart can't hurt your driving. I'm not going to say that's a substitute for years of being on the road, but it also can't hurt either.
Right.
There's not going to be turtle shells coming at you, I suppose, or mushrooms to power you up. But at the same time, it's reading and reacting and things like that. So, and he's a pretty down to earth kid. In as much as a 14-year could be, I don't see him hot rodding or doing things like that. That's just not his style. So, hopefully, we'll be all right.
It'll be all right. Oh, I love it. It's a Melick Monday with your hometown lawyer, Rob Melick, on the air with us. Of course, the studio line's open for your questions. If you need some advice, give us a call. 885-4446 is our studio line number, 885-4446. And the text line is 887-9595. 887-9595 is our text line. This is a paid program. Advice and opinions expressed during the program are solely that of Melick Law, not WBEV or Good Karma Brands. Along with Rob Melick, I'm Amy Hudson. We are live in the Slumberland Furniture Studios today and also the Daily Dodge TV studios. So certainly check out the stream live at dailydodge.com. You had to drive in a little bit of rain on your way to the studios today, but nothing crazy. I can hear the rain on the roof of the building. Can you hear that a little bit?
Absolutely. It's getting worse. So I don't know how by the end of the show, we'll see how it goes. But yeah. And then again, while you were giving out phone numbers, maybe I'll just give out my phone number as well.
Do.
Again, just as a way to get a hold of me. And again, for people listening on the show, even if you have questions about your basic, your current estate plan, I'm happy to answer those as well. Schedule an appointment, free initial consultation, whatever you'd like to do. Call or text. My number is 262-347-3444. Again, 262-347-3444. That number is available 24/7. I may not answer 24/7, but I will return the call very promptly upon my receipt of the call. And that's the number for all of my offices. Again, for most people in the listening and the viewing audience, the Beaver Dam office would be the closest. That's Sandy and Matt's office that they let me meet clients out of. But I also do have offices in Richfield, Port Washington, and West Bend. So again, the number 262-347-3444. I do offer free initial consultations at any of my 4 offices, at your home or virtually. And finally, I do offer a 20% discount for WBEV listeners or viewers, as the case may be.
You are generous and accommodating, Rob Melick.
I do what I can.
That's all you can do. And you do a lot regarding helping people, making sure that they have their estate plans, in proper order, providing that peace of mind that comes with, knowing that their wishes will be carried out, things, with their family will be as they want them to be. And, there's that big component of education and making sure people understand how this process works because, at the end of the day, it is about protecting assets and saving those that we love that aggravation and saving their time and their money, regarding avoiding probate. There's a lot that goes into the picture.
For sure. And the other thing I always want to mention here, and again, this may seem obvious, but I'm going to say it anyway. This is an event that's guaranteed to happen. Right. I mean, we talked about the mortality rate among the human race being at 100%. When it comes to this area of the law, and it's interesting, like I said, being a first-generation lawyer, I compare and contrast it to the other types of law that my law school buddies, friends like that practice. And I'm the only estate planning attorney in my main friend group. In fact, I think
goodness.
As far as I know, because, through Facebook and different things like that, I mean, there's the people I talk to all the time, but I'm aware of only one other person I graduated from law school with who's an estate planning attorney. Out of a class of almost 200. So, and I could be wrong. Maybe there's someone I'm missing out there. Not everyone's on Facebook. I don't keep up with everybody, but there's only one other, and she's in Virginia. So she's, kind of far away. But it's interesting because the other areas in which my friends tend to practice, criminal defense, personal injury, family law, whatever the case is, we always talk about this, that those are events that we hope we never have to be in that situation, right? We hope we're never going to go through a divorce. We hope we never get accused of a crime. We hope we never suffer a personal injury. So these events could occur, they could not occur. Whereas with estate planning, there's a 100% chance you're going to need some sort of estate planning in your life, whether it's proactive, which is the better way to do it, or retroactive. You didn't do the estate plan, and now your loved ones need help administering the estate after you pass away.
Oh, that has to be messy.
Right. Oh, it is. And so the idea is that everybody is a potential client because everybody needs estate planning services. It's just a question of when you get them and how much peace of mind you get to enjoy because you've taken care of it ahead of time.
Do you find when it comes to a situation where someone hasn't planned properly, do you know from the get-go, like this could be complicated and it could be messy?
Yeah,
like, I mean, regardless how simple or complicated their plan would have been if they would have started it at the proper time.
Yes, especially when we're looking at blended families. Yeah. That's where it really comes into play because, Wisconsin has marital property laws, but at the same time, there's fractional interest based upon whether you have children from a previous relationship, you're married to someone else, things like that. And again, these are all things that can be easily accounted for if you have the correct estate plan in place. So, I mean, and that will happen. I'll have people pass away suddenly. They didn't have their estate plan taken care of. They're estranged from a child, but guess what? The law doesn't consider the closeness of the relationship. If you have the child and the child is not common to that marriage, then that child has rights under Wisconsin marital property laws. So those are things that do happen. And they're sad because if people had taken the appropriate steps, they would have been able to create an estate plan tailored to their needs, and the assets that they worked hard for during their life would go where they want them to go. What I do find, though, is as a general rule, it's not always the case, but as a general rule, the more contentious an estate could be, the more likely they are to seek legal counsel ahead of time because you know the issues ahead of time, right?
Okay.
I mean, you know if you have a black sheep in the family. You know if you have siblings or children who don't get along. You know if you have a blended family. I mean, these are things that don't surprise you, right? Now, if you don't plan appropriately and you have a sudden life event, that's one thing, but it tends to be the people who procrastinate the longest, or the people who incorrectly believe it's simple. I have a spouse. I just have 2 kids. I want it all to go to the spouse and then divide it 50-50. I don't need to have an estate plan. Those are the people who tend to procrastinate the most. And again, it will eventually get to where you want it to go, but nine times out of 10, it's going to implicate having to go through probate. Because if you have more than $50,000 worth of probate assets, the estate will go to probate. If you've done no planning, most people are going to well exceed that $50,000 threshold. So that's where it can get time-consuming and expensive. Average cost of probate is about $5,000 to $10,000. Some probates are more, some are less, and the average length of probate is about 12 to 18 months.
Oh my goodness,
Again,
that's a long time.
It is, and this can all be avoided by creating a trust, and that's one of the differences. A lot of my clients, or the first question they ask prospective clients, what's the difference between a will and a trust? That is the most commonly asked question in my practice, and I think this will be about as good of a time to answer that question as we can have here. Because when most people think of estate planning, they think of the word will. I know I've used this analogy on the show before, but it's a good one, so I'm going to use it again. Think of the show Family Feud, right? We've polled 100 people in the audience. Name the word most commonly associated with estate planning. Ring the buzzer. Will. Will's always going to be the number one answer. So let's explain what a will is and what it does, and maybe more importantly, what a will does not do. So a well-drafted will is always going to do 2 things, and when applicable, it's going to do a third. First thing that the well-drafted will does is determine who are your beneficiaries. Who or what, in the case of charities, are going to receive the proceeds of the estate after the decedent or the decedents pass away. Secondly, it's going to determine who's in charge. People have heard the term executor before. Yeah. You get to assign the person who's responsible for shepherding all the assets in the estate, paying out any final expenses, and then distributing the proceeds in accordance with your wishes.
It's a big job to be the executor.
Absolutely. So the third thing it can do, as we discussed earlier, is it allows you to determine guardianship of minor children. For those of you who missed the show earlier or tuned in late, an estate plan is the only way to determine guardianship of minor children, whether it's a will or a trust. Nothing else, notarized letters, none of those are enforceable. Verbal agreements, none of those are enforceable. Has to be in either a will or a trust to be enforceable. So again, 3 things the well-drafted will does. Determine who the beneficiaries are, determine who's in charge, determine who gets to serve as guardian for minor children. Those are all great things. Those are things we want an estate plan to do. Here's the problem. A well-drafted will even a perfectly drafted will is not guaranteed to avoid probate. That's the key thing.
Whoa.
Wills can avoid probate, but they're not guaranteed to avoid probate. And that kind of ties back into what I said before. A will only avoids probate if the deceased had less than $50,000 worth of probate assets. Biggest issue there is real estate. Most people who own a home, especially in this current market, have significantly more than $50,000 worth of probate assets just with the home before we get to anything else. So if those folks only have a will, the estate goes to probate, which surprises people. They think, oh, a will is good enough. Well, a will is not good enough for most people. Most people need to have a trust to guarantee the estate avoids probate. So those are the kind of conversations I have with my clients during the initial consultation, because maybe they don't own a home. Well, then a will-based plan becomes more of a possibility. And again, to be very clear, when I meet with clients as a lawyer, my job is not to tell my clients what to do. I do not tell my clients what to do. I give my clients information and options. I explain the consequences of either doing something or not doing something, and then let them make the decision they want to make. Because that's very important. As lawyers, we are advisors. We are counselors. We do not tell clients what to do. So that's an important distinction to make there. And that is the full information when it comes to the differences between wills and trusts. Wills will only avoid probate if you have less than $50,000 worth of probate assets.
Rob Melick of Melick Law, your hometown lawyer, is here with us this morning on Taking Care of Business. Of course, the studio line's open for your calls at 885-4446. 885-4446 is the studio line. And you can also text those questions in to Rob at 887-9595. 887-9595. Rob joins us the third Monday of every month. I can't believe May is flying by, that we're, entering the week of Memorial Day. It's going by so quickly. And Rob really is your go-to guy when it comes to pulling together that proper estate plan for you. And let folks know how they can reach out to you, Rob, because you share an office here in Beaver Dam with our friends Sandy and Matt Heyer at Heyer Insurance. Did you just see the lights flicker a little bit here in the Daily Dodge TV studios?
I did not. My head was down. I didn't see that. I'm sorry. Did not see that.
But you're in Beaver Dam, Richfield, and West Bend, and Port Washington.
Correct. And the number to get a hold of me at any of those offices is the same, 262-347-3444. Again, 262-347-3444. I do offer free initial consultations at any of those offices. If you'd prefer to meet in your home or at another location, I'm happy to do that as well. I also offer virtual consultations. And along those lines, sometimes I have clients who have children who are out of state or out of the area, so we have an in-person meeting with them, but we can FaceTime in a child or whomever else you want to be a part of that conversation, financial advisor, whomever you want. Again, my goal, Amy, is to make it as easy as possible. I know that it's a big step for a lot of people to schedule that consultation with an estate planning attorney. It's something they don't like to think about. Mm-hmm. And again, oftentimes what I will hear from clients is they've thought about it for a while. They may not have done anything about it, but they've heard about it for a while. They hear a show like this. They listen periodically here, and they hear 5, 6, 7 different episodes, and then they finally decide to call in a couple of years later. So very common, a very frequent thing that people will do, but I stand ready, willing, and able to answer those questions. The other thing I will say is this also: if you have existing documents, it may not be a bad idea to get a second set of eyes to look at those documents, because laws change, preferences change. So that is a service that I offer on a complimentary basis. If people have existing estate planning documents and they want to run them by me, I offer a free initial consultation and we'll review those documents. And what I do is I do this very simply. I call it telling the story of your estate plan. So you have existing estate planning documents, you bring them to me. And what I will do is I will say, if we change nothing, this is how your plan will go. And what I instruct my prospective clients to do is say stop when you don't like what I'm hearing, okay? Because you may like everything that I'm hearing, in which case, great. Your documents serve every purpose. Best of luck to you. Have a great day. On the other hand, if you hear things you don't like, then we can address what the options are to tell the story in a way that's more reflective of what your preferences are presently. So that is a service that I offer to everybody, a complimentary review of existing documents. So I do offer that free initial consultation, complimentary viewing of existing documents, kind of a diagnostic. I mean, think of it like a car. If you have a problem with the car, the mechanic will put it on a rack, take a look at it for you at no charge, and say, okay, here's what I recommend. And it's up to you as the client to decide decide whether you take the mechanic's recommendation, the attorney's recommendation. It's an analogy. It works out depending on what venue you're in. Same kind of concept there. But I do also offer a 20% discount for WBEV listeners. So if you do elect to give me a call, please mention you heard me on WBEV, and we'll afford a 20% discount there.
That's really nice. And when you talk about, reviewing those existing documents, think about how quickly the year is going, the month of May. We have those big life events, things change, and, what is in your existing estate plan may not be in the front of your mind, but it is going to be important, and so important that it reflects properly where you are in your life right now or coming out of a big life event.
Absolutely. And what I always say is this: I challenge anybody over the age of 40, let's say, to say, look back on your life 20 years ago. If you created estate planning documents 20 years ago, would they be the same as they are now?
Not for me.
Probably not for most people. And I'd make the argument, if you are 40 now and you look at what you are at 60, is it going to be the same documents? Probably not. At 60, I hope to have grandchildren down the road, right? We don't know. We don't know what life events are going to occur during that time. I don't know if I'm going to make it to 60. We just don't know, right? And that's the whole idea behind estate planning. We want to make sure that we can have documents that reflect our reality, which kind of leads into my next point. If you create a set of estate planning documents with me, I do not charge for revisions to those documents. So if those life events do occur after you create the documents with me, we revise the documents. That's done on a complimentary basis because, again, I do not want my clients to be in a position where they have to choose between having out-of-date, inferior documents that don't reflect their present preferences or having to pay a lawyer to make those changes. So I kind of combine them both. Not charge for revision. So that's another value add that I offer to my clients as well.
That's really nice. And, as we were talking about big life events and how quickly things move, you have a big life event coming up, a big anniversary.
I do. 17 years on May 27th. So, yeah, excited about that. So
congratulations.
Thank
17th
you.
Wedding anniversary.
That's right. So we'll see how that goes. I'm sure we'll end up spending the day with the boys like we always do, but maybe we'll be able to, they're 14 and 11, so maybe we can sneak out for dinner at some point. But it's on actual Memorial Day proper, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, it'll be exciting. So
happy anniversary.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Rob Melick, your hometown lawyer with Melick Law, is with us here this morning. Studio lines open for your calls at 885-4446. And of course, you can also text at 887-9595. It is not fun to think about the end of our time here on this earth, but really important that we plan properly for it. And you really do have a gift as far as putting people at ease, Rob, and making sure that things are comfortable when it comes to having these difficult conversations.
Yeah, and I have to read the room a little bit. Like I said, as I mentioned earlier in the show, some people come in, they're very businesslike, matter of fact. Hey, this is going to happen. We want to make sure we're in place. And I have some people who are, in tears the moment they come in. They're like, look, my mother just passed away. I know we have to do this. I really don't want to think about this. So, at some level, there's that human aspect of it, and just saying, like, it's going to be okay. This is what we need to do. Here are things we need to think about, and changing the perspective from we are dying eventually to let's make it as easy as possible as we can for our loved ones. Let's make sure that the money we worked so hard for during our life goes to the people or the causes we want it to go to with minimal time, delay, aggravation, and governmental interference as possible. And that comes by having an estate plan that's guaranteed to avoid probate. And that's what we do at our office.
Yeah, and it's interesting when folks don't really understand what probate is, but they just know it's going to be bad and they want to avoid it. And
That's
it's
right.
easily avoidable.
It's easily avoidable by creating a trust. The trust is the guaranteed way to avoid probate. And again, the way I look at it is I draw an analogy to insurance, right? I've yet in my life, and maybe this will change, and if someone has a different philosophy in this, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear you call in and say this, but I've never once met in my life someone who owns their home without a mortgage that doesn't have homeowners insurance.
Oh, my goodness.
It's not required.
No.
You're not required to have it. It's not like auto insurance. In order to legally drive in Wisconsin, you have to have auto insurance. Not everyone follows the law, but you have to have it legally. Homeowners insurance is not legally required. It's required for us folks who have mortgages because the bank will not lend us money for our home unless we can provide proof of homeowners insurance. But once you've paid off the home, you're no longer legally required to have it. I have never once in my 42 years on this earth met somebody who said, you know what, the day my mortgage is done, I'm canceling my homeowners insurance, even though they know that you're going to be paying more into insurance than you're ever going to get out of it. A big baseball fan, right? Why do you think it's American Family Field right now? It's not because they're paying out claims, I can promise you that. Okay, it's because they take in a lot more money than they receive. Homeowners insurance is a bad gamble, but people want the certainty.
Yeah.
They want to know. They're happy to pay for that. Maybe not happy, but they will pay for that certainty of paying that premium every single year. Why should an estate plan be any different? Well, I can tell you one reason it's different, because if you create a trust to get that guarantee you avoid probate, you pay that fee once. You don't pay it every single year. Homeowners insurance, you have to pay your premium every single year. If you forget to pay it one year, you decide not to pay it one year, and that happens to be the year you have the loss, guess what? You don't get a dime. Whereas with an estate plan, create a trust, you get that guarantee that we avoid probate no matter what happens down the road.
You know, you had mentioned earlier in the show, Rob, and you've shared this before, but first-generation lawyer. We talked about how there really isn't, a dramatic reading of a will that, Hollywood doesn't, really do you or other attorneys, justice when it comes to those types of things. It's not that dramatic. What inspired you to become an estate planning attorney?
So when it came to that, it was one of those things where I started out at a commercial litigation firm, which is what a lot of attorneys start out at. Tough hours, demanding work environment,
total grind,
70, 80, 90 hours a week. Brutal, right? But help pay down law school debt, so that's what you do. Ended up taking a job at a general practice firm, and I remember there was a senior attorney there who had told me, he said, Rob, if I know you're a young attorney, but if you really want to get into an area of the law, I recommend estate planning, because it'll be best for your mental health. You'll be good at it for two main reasons. You don't have opposing counsel who's necessarily adversarial, trying to get the best of you, and you don't have court deadlines. So estate planning really is conversations. It's sitting across a table from someone and helping a family's wishes become reality. And that's a lot more attractive to me than pounding the table at an oral argument in front of a judge. And like I said, a lot of my friends do that. I have a lot of law school classmates of mine, friends of mine who are great trial lawyers. That they love doing what they do, but I love doing what I do too. It may not be the most glamorous thing in the world, but I think it fits my skill set, and I really do enjoy it. And something I hope to pass on to one or both my boys down the road. I'm hoping they can take over the firm down the road and have second and maybe even third generation lawyers after that. That's my goal, at least.
That would be great. I hope it all rolls out that way, because you are so in the moment in every conversation. You take the time to listen, and you truly want to help people. So you really are the go-to guy when it comes for folks to have that conversation, take a look at those existing documents that they might have, and there's nothing to be scared about, but you just have to put it into motion.
Right. And the idea is this: information's great. And that's why having information is a wonderful thing. But unless we do something with that information, it's not really valuable. We can have all the information in the world, but until we put pen to paper and sign the documents to make them enforceable, we don't really have anything. So I do have a lot of clients who are at that point. They're like, I wanted to do this a while ago, but I could just never pull the trigger to get the meeting. I know it's important. Like I said, my advice: have the call, have the meeting, and then after that meeting, if you decide you don't want to proceed or you want to kick it down the road, so be it. But take that step to schedule the meeting and see where it goes. That's my advice.
And you're so easy to get a hold of. You're very accommodating regarding how someone needs to meet, whether it's in person, virtually, on a phone call. You have offices in Beaver Dam, Richfield, West Bend, and Port Washington. And no, I didn't do those off the top of my head like I usually do. I wrote down the Richfield one.
No problem there. And I appreciate that. And the other thing I will say too is, as far as having those initial consultations, like I said, it's always a free initial consultation. So money's not going to be the reason people should or shouldn't create that initial meeting with me. And again, get the information, make a decision. Even if you decide to work with another estate planning attorney, that's fine. That's your choice. But at least you're getting information. You're getting these documents in place.
And it's so important that everyone is on the same page. When we have Matt and Sandy hire in for Senior Solutions on Fridays, your name will come up on shows often, because you do work together as a team, depending upon the situation. And transparency is always a word that Matt will use when he talks about how important it is to have everyone who's involved in the process be a part of those conversations.
We're all on the same team. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Your financial advisor, your accountant, your estate planning attorney, we're all working for the same goal. And that's a very important thing, and it's a relationship that I do cherish in that regard.
Yeah. Amy Hudson alongside Rob Melick here. It is a Melick Monday. Rob joins us the third Monday of every month. And we love having you on the air and really appreciate your time and what you do to help folks. We do have just a few minutes left in the show, so I'll share our phone number again. 885-4446 is the studio line if you'd like to reach out with a question for Rob. And you can also text at 887-9595. But the most important number is your number, Rob Melick, at Melick Law, so people can reach out and have that initial conversation or make an appointment to sit down with their existing documents.
Absolutely. And one other thing I do want to mention too is I do offer night and weekend appointments as well. I know some
You
people
never stop, Rob Melick.
No, I enjoy what I do, Amy.
do.
I don't plan to stop. So again, I do offer those as well. I have appointments through 8 p.m. tonight, so it's just the way it goes. But I'm happy to do it. Love what I do for a living. Again, my number is 262-347-3444. Again, 262-347-3444. Offices in Beaver Dam, Richfield, Port Washington, West Bend. Free initial consultation, in-home visits, virtual visits, 20% discount for WBEV listeners.
Very generous and very much appreciated. We're at our 5-minute mark. What would you like to focus on for the last 5 minutes of the show, Rob Melick? That's a lot of pressure.
That is a lot of pressure. But no, it's, again, just to kind of emphasize what I said before, just making sure that you get the appropriate information. What I've found in my practice a lot, and again, talking to law school acquaintances, things like that, for whatever reason, I feel like estate planning is a topic that non-attorneys feel like they know everything about. I run into that all the time. And these are people with good intentions.
Sure.
I mean, these are your neighbors, your friends, your siblings who maybe went through an experience and they say, well, you really should do this, really should do that. But there's so many nuances to it. What may work for the Smith family may not work for the Jones family. What may occur in a different state is not going to occur in this state. So having that misinformation sometimes causes people to either do nothing or get incorrect information. So what I urge people to do is get the correct information. Take the time to speak with an estate planning attorney and get the full facts. Figure out what a plan can do for you, what your options are before you make a decision, as opposed to just relying on what a friend or a neighbor may tell you. That doesn't happen in the criminal setting, right? People aren't going to give advice on how to plea or different things like that. They leave it up to an estate plan or to a criminal defense attorney. If you have an issue with a divorce, they may say, well, in my divorce I did this, but nobody's going to do it on their own. They're going to consult with a divorce attorney. Estate planning is really no different. It's important to make sure you get full and complete information from someone who practices in this area for a living, as opposed to just someone who, reads a lot or knows a little bit about it from their own experience. So I guess that would be my general advice, general caution to people who are listening. Just make sure you get full and complete information before you decide what to do or what not to do.
Absolutely, because there's an awful lot on the line regarding planning properly, and you want to make sure that you're doing things the right way.
Absolutely. And also another thing too is it's making sure, kind of we alluded to earlier, making sure that everything works together. For instance, when you have an estate plan, it's very important that we list beneficiaries correctly on things like bank accounts and retirement assets and life insurance. So, if you have an existing estate plan and hey, or you think hey, this is great, I don't need to change anything, that's only part of the equation. The analogy I always use is this. I can create a trust for you, but if the trust isn't funded properly, it's not going to do what it's supposed to do. So you can have all the right estate planning documents, but if you don't have the assets going to the trust appropriately, then it's not going to work. So just because the documents as they exist are done correctly, you have to make sure that assets get into the trust. The analogy I use is a bucket. A trust is like a bucket. Well, you have to make sure that you have a mechanism in place to make sure that the assets get into the bucket when they're supposed to get there. And if they don't get there, the bucket's pretty useless at that point.
Rob Melick of Melick Law, thank you very much for being here today on a Melick Monday. We appreciate you very much.
My pleasure, Amy. Thank you.
You're welcome. This has been a paid program. Advice and opinions expressed during the program are solely that of Melick Law, not WBEV or Good Karma Brands.